Very good. Well, in this video, let's cover a little bit around problem solving, Natalie. So, problem solving we know is a lifeblood, a core aspect of Lean and the whole philosophy around it and how we develop our people and obviously use the tools to identify and solve problems. So, we've all learned many different frameworks of problem solving. I will say personally, I've been indoctrinated and some would maybe call it brainwashed around what's known as the Toyota business practices. And these are the 8 steps of problem solving that are still consistently taught across the company even today. I'll give you a little bit of an origin of where this came from. So, back in 2001, Toyota was recognizing they had a gap and a disconnect between their culture and their values, kind of at a global level and at an individual site level. And they put out a document called the Toyota Way 2001. And that also was the genesis of that Toyota Way book. But really, it helped categorize and put into context here are the five things that we want to focus on. Call them values, call them principles, call them tenets. But it was based on continuous improvement and respect for people. And within this, obviously, problem solving comes right to the forefront. They put that out in 2001 and they recognized they still had a disconnect, again, between global and at a local site. And it gave rise to the need in 2005 to put out what's called the Toyota Business Practices. And as I said before, this is consistent across each site that they have globally and as well kind of into the supplier network. And it's what's taught in different lean courses. And thankfully, it's what I've been able to learn and to now teach as part of my journey as well. And so the beautiful thing about this is that I can go into any of the different sites globally, any of us can. And once we learn these 8 steps, we can immediately contribute to problem solving because we're familiar with them. We can see it up on a nice whiteboard. It's what's taught in the young elementary schools, even as high schoolers are coming through as well, to be able to think this way. And it makes it much more efficient when we're going through this problem solving journey that we're speaking the same language, coming back to a shared truth. So obviously you can read through this kind of on your own time in the video if you'd like to pause and look at some of the guiding philosophy. But with these 8 steps, it's obviously impactful because it guides you through a very clear, proven process of how we clarify the problem with a problem statement, break it down, spend time asking these 5W1H type questions, and you'll see more detail on that as we get into it. Prioritizing, setting a target, going through traditional root cause analysis, working through the development of countermeasures, implementation, monitoring, and then standardizing. And what I love is that you see on these pages the plan, do, check, and act kind of across each of these steps. And it echoes what we know from Six Sigma with define, measure, analyze, improve, control, and even other frameworks as well, quick iteration, agile, all the rest. So you'll see overlap of the principles. And from this as well, there are many different references that have come about. One for me that I like is this traditional A3 type template, which takes those 8 steps and overlays it in a way that you can follow and make sense of it as you're solving a problem, whether on the shop floor or in the boardroom. And we've all learned this A3 method in some ways, whether from a book that we've read, call it Managing to Learn, or maybe other problem solving references that you've gone through. And this just helps us dimensionalize and see it on one quick page. Another reference, which I find overwhelming, but with the advent of AI, helps come through more clearly, is around this reference and these guiding questions that we can ask at each step of that problem solving journey. So again, this is the 8 steps, and here are questions within each. You can see we've got a long list of questions that we maybe could and should be asking at each of these steps to feel like we've gone through this process with sufficient discipline. So where I started recognizing the use case of ChatGPT and other tools is to be able to say, take these types of references that are so fulsome and maybe difficult to work through and navigate, and help me now start to crystallize it and have it come through as I'm working through my problem solving. So what I would traditionally do, kind of from my side, I would take each of those references, I would load them into ChatGPT and say, here's a problem solving guide um, of how to get started solving my productivity problem on the shop floor. Navigate me through some first steps. And obviously I'll start loading it up. And Natalie will show you briefly in a moment an example of a good prompt versus a bad prompt. So for me, at least it gets it started. And Natalie also has told me that ChatGPT never disappoints in its ability to generate an answer. So that we know. But the point is we can't immediately begin to use it in a crystallized pinpoint value add way right from this. So I'm getting you started here, maybe from my example of what I've done in the past, but I would like to turn it over to Natalie briefly and give her example of a good prompt versus a bad prompt. Before I do that, you can start seeing like we are getting a framework here. We can see exactly what it is requesting us to do, guiding us to do. actions for us today and for tomorrow and as we start going through the homework. But I would like to give Natalie the chance to show you a much more practical example working through it.
Thank you so much, Ben. I wanted to focus on a specific problem that a food manufacturing company would potentially have. And so I will go ahead and share my screen. Let me know
We can
if you
see.
can see ChatGPT on my screen.
We can.
Okay. All right. So we have broken cookies problem that some retail shops have called the manufacturing company and have complained about, and they absolutely want the issue to be resolved. And we'll go through this very quickly. And if you want, Ben, we can take the time to do it a little bit more carefully at the next session. But here's a problem statement that I introduced into ChatGPT. So a few retail stores have contacted Best Crumbs company with issues about the broken cookies. And all we have here is that there's an excessive number of boxes with broken cookies, and it's coming from several retail shops. And my question to ChatGPT is, what are the main factors contributing to the problem? And I know that I want a fishbone diagram true to the A-step process and the A3 that you were just showing us. The fishbone diagram is one of the first go-to things that I personally utilize with my teams. And so we asked the question, and we got some, a pretty thorough answer in a sense, covering just the typical Ishikawa man, machine, method, material, measurement, and environment. I'll just take an example here of the method. Because I want to compare it to what a good prompt would do, is inefficient packing method is something that is being brought up. Inconsistent quality checks during packing, or filling boxes beyond capacity, and proper stacking on pallets. So it's the answers are good. But I think that if we were to show some of the outputs to a maintenance engineer or an engineer or an operations person, they might feel that it's not sufficient information. So what I wanted to show you is the power of a good prompt. So in this case, I've entered a whole lot more data. Not only am I, informing ChatGPT about the crumb issue, that it's retail shops that have called the company about this, but also we're becoming more specific. We're assigning a role to ChatGPT. So in this case, ChatGPT is a continuous improvement engineer. And the continuous improvement engineer was approached by the quality manager and the operations manager regarding this issue, giving it some context about what had been already done to fix some of the maintenance issues in the past. And then we're also asking it for a very specific output. So we still want to do the Ishikawa. We still want the typical categories that are used in Ishikawa: machines, method, materials, manpower, measurement, and environment. But I'm also telling it that I don't want more than 20 factors. We know, from my experience anyway, ChatGPT can be very wordy at times. So we want the top 20 factors listed. It should be something that maintenance and operations can read, understand, and engage with. And I'm also looking for depth, rather than just saying, well, the mixer may have failed. I'm giving it an example of what could be a component in the mixture that could have contributed to the issue. So this is the prompt, and we're seeing a similar output in terms of the format, since it's still at Nishikawa, but we're now seeing that we are getting a little bit more detail around the output that we're generating. So going back to methods, because I wanted to compare with the previous prompt, in this case, we're talking now about over baking due to an oven zone temperature being too high, or uneven baking, or improper cooling before packing. So it's becoming a little bit more focused. And that's all about, that's really what we're looking for from ChatGPT is not just information, but really information that we can run with and still needing domain expertise to provide oversight and more depth. But I think it gets us a little closer to something that we can work with. Back to you, Ben.
Very good. Thanks, Natalie. So hopefully that helps explain a bit of the difference of how we can use ChatGPT basically as a repository of different resources that we have, and then start to get that level deeper, as Natalie's showing us as a CI engineer. And we'll give you that example for today just as a starting point, and we would like to circle back to this because, as we know, problem solving is a central theme in this lean framework. So we'll have a few more of those examples as we go through on the journey together. But again, goal for today, give you a high-level overview of our philosophy on problem solving, that traditional 8-step framework. You saw that briefly as I went through it. And then as Natalie's getting started, we know the Ishikawa diagram can be used throughout the problem solving process. Typically, in step 2, break down the problem, starting to dimensionalize or categorize those different themes. Also can be brought in at different points of that process. But we're now starting to see that that link can be built, and then we have this wonderful tool available to us that can help fill in some of those details along the way. So we'll leave it there for now on this video and look forward to seeing you soon on the next one.
Thank you.